What's going on? Margarita was carefully steering away from the hospital building. What idiot blocked the driveway? She honked the horn but no one showed up. The only possible way out was blocked and she urgently needed to go to court. Rita jumped out of the car, pulled out the diary in which he wrote down everything important, quickly scribbled an angry message in her doctor's handwriting and shoved it under the windshield wipers and then hurried, jumping over puddles and cursing herself for wearing high-heeled boots. She was practically late for court and it was really important. A divorce was coming. They had been married for more than 1 year, built a house together, not luxurious but quite solid, and now Pasha had this Oksana with whom he had been cheating on her for the last year. Rita was huddled in the apartment of her friend and former classmate who had gone to Africa under the international program, Doctors Without Borders. She paid the utilities, transferred a small amount to the rent and hoped to sell the house and buy at least some housing. In general, Margarita was going to make a favorable impression on the judge. She expected that they would appoint a woman, but they got a man, some Pyotr Borisovich Savinov. One could only guess how fair his decision would be. That's why Tarita was jumping around in heels and a business suit instead of her usual jeans and shirt. Today. She even did her makeup and hair, and then this guy in a Lada blocked the only exit. Judging by the mess in the car, the owner was a man, although Margarita would not have bet on this either. In any case, this guy ruined her day. At least she could walk to the court in 15 minutes at a quick pace. She burst into the courtroom at the very last moment. The almost ex-husband glanced at her with a grin. She was always late, even if she left early. That was her nature. Margarita plopped down on a free seat and caught her breath. The judge was a man of about 40, quite pleasant in appearance. He looked at her with sympathy. Margarita smiled dazzlingly, as she did when it was necessary to tell a patient or his relative something unpleasant, to sweeten the pill, so to speak. So the demands for divorce are satisfied, read out Pyotr Borisovich. Do the parties have any objections? No, answered Pavel. Margarita also shook her head. As for the joint property, the court ruled to allocate equal shares in the house acquired by Sukova and Sukhov during the marriage. I need compensation, Margarita was indignant. Well, how do you imagine this? Should I live under the same roof with my ex-husband and his mistress? This is absurd. What's wrong with that? Pavel suddenly spoke up. The house is big, 2 entrances. We'll block it with a wall and that's it. Live on your half. We won't even cross paths. I'm not going to live with you behind a thin wall. Rita was indignant. We have an assessment of the property. Let the court appoint compensation. You pay it to me and we'll separate forever. But I don't have any money. The ex-husband was indignant. And in general, we Oksanas are not embarrassed by such a neighborhood. I'll note that you can also buy half of the house from my client. The ex-husband's lawyer butted in, and in general the house is quite realistically divided. I'm sure Mrs. Sukhova's demands are completely absurd. After dividing the house, she can sell her property to anyone. No, this doesn't suit me. Rita shouted to Bagrovia. The hearing on the division of property is postponed for a week. The judge said, wearily, agree among yourselves. Then we'll continue, and the divorce has already been formalized. Pavel clarified, his mistress hanging on his elbow. Margarita shuddered with disgust. She imagined how she would behold this feigned happiness every day. Oksana was a cunning provincial pike who had grabbed her lottery ticket and she was definitely not going to let it go. Rita silently left the hall. The relief from the thought that they were no longer husband and wife was offset by the fact that they still had to divide the house. She walked up the wide marble staircase and remembered how she came up with the design for this house. Then she invested the money from the sale of her parents' apartment in it, and now she can't even get compensation for her expenses. Then she heard hurried footsteps behind her. Rita stepped aside, but no one was in a hurry to overtake them. On the contrary, the steps slowed down and Pavel's voice sounded in time with them. You even managed to be late for your own divorce. Her ex-husband was not going to pity her. But can't you calm down? I said, you won't get the house. You can just give it to me or accept the fact that you'll have to live like neighbors. Go you know where, she told him. When did you even manage to turn into this? Who's the one who started talking here? Her ex-husband said sarcastically. A savior of the hopelessly ill who's been waiting for a promotion for 5 years, but for some reason, her more successful colleagues always pass her by. Rita, it's time to admit you're a loser. Leave me alone, Margarita shouted, losing her patience. Her phone rang. She had to interrupt the conversation. Yes, what do you want? Did you leave me a note? The man's voice sounded embarrassed. Sorry, I didn't bring Mom for an examination on purpose. I didn't even think that I'd have time to prevent someone from leaving. Ouch, we used to have 2 exits, Margarita sighed. And a week ago they dug up the heating main and now, instead of the second road, there's a hole. Wow, I didn't know that. How can I make up for the wine? The man asked. I just arrived at work. I need to drop in for a bit and then I'm completely free. For some reason, the voice echoed not only in the receiver but also to the side of her. Margarita turned her head and saw the same car that had locked her in. It was now parking in front of the courthouse. A service mark appeared on the glass. Oh, I think I see you. Margarita waved to her interlocutor. Good afternoon. A man in a suit hurried up to her. My name is Valery Borisovich Savinov. I work here. Oh, I wonder who. Margarita was surprised watching her ex-husband's face lengthen. A judge, Valery smiled back. And what's your name, Margarita? The woman introduced herself and smiled dazzlingly. Pavel shook his fist at her from afar. Listen, I just had a divorce today. I was late. So I didn't hold back too much with my words. Yeah, nothing, I didn't understand a word, to be honest. The judge answered with a smile. Just a phone number. So how's your divorce? How are you? It took place, Rita sighed. But there is a stumbling block, the house, which somehow needs to be divided. Oh, that means I'm lucky that such a beautiful woman is free. Valerie smiled broadly. If you're not in a hurry, maybe you can wait a couple of minutes. Let's go to a cafe talk. If you have your documents with you, I'll take a look. So let's consider this a free legal consultation. Wow, great. Rita beamed. Well then I'll go get my car. For now, no need, I'll give you a ride there later. Valerie smiled. By the way, what were you doing at the hospital? I work there in the neurology department, a doctor. Margarita explained. The boss asked for a couple of hours off. It seems like there's not much time left, so if you're going to be late, it might even be better to reschedule everything. Oh, my business doesn't require such a rush. Valerie waved his hand. There's a nice cafe over there and even tables outside. Margarita went with him, taking the man by the arm. The idea of putting on heels and putting on makeup no longer seemed so crazy. Oksana was watching her from afar, laughing from the car. At that time Pasha was trying to drive out of the parking lot. Is your ex not a slouch? Oksana noted. She picked up the man right at the exit. Oh, watch out, Pasha, everything might turn upside down in your business. Yes, for the money I paid the lawyer, everything will be rock solid, he snapped. And you know what? You should talk less. And what did I just think? She's rarely just a shrew, and today she's all dressed up as if she considers divorce a holiday. Oh, she's just struggling with her last bit of strength. Pavel waved it off. You're much prettier. Thanks, Oxen purred. Do you know how to cheer me up? They drove away from the courthouse watching Margarita and Valerie leave. Pavel was actually worried that his ex-wife would meet a normal lawyer. After all, she wanted a peaceful divorce and didn't hire any lawyers. And the doctor couldn't afford them. But he'd gone broke on the most famous lawyer in town and was now really counting on a favorable outcome for himself. In the cafe, Valerie was looking through documents from Granny Rita. He wrinkled his brows in concentration forehead and looked puzzled. Then he asked, "Have you kept the documents about the amount invested? Well, for example, proof of the sale of your parents' apartment." "No, our old dacha, where everything was lying, was flooded and a lot of papers disappeared." Rita was embarrassed. "Okay, then we'll have to think about how else we can help you," promised Valerie. "I understand that this is impolite, but you are a doctor, right? Maybe you can give me some advice. Tell me, is there a competent neurologist in our city? They still can't diagnose Mom. My brother and I have taken her everywhere. No one understands anything and her condition is getting worse from month to month." Bring her, I'll take a look," Reed answered. "Just get a referral for hospitalization from the local doctor. I'll observe, prescribe tests and we'll see. But I'll tell you right away. We are not gods." "Yes, I understand. I would just like some clarity, even the saddest." The judge was embarrassed. "By the way. Who are you? Are you getting a divorce, Savinov?" Margarita sighed. "Is he your relative? Will there be a conflict of interest perhaps?" "Well, he will change the judge." Valerie waved his hand. "Petka and our family went along the civil law line and I judge swindlers and murderers who do not respect the criminal code. I understand, but it seems to me that this will not change much." Margarita waved her hand. "In general, I am waiting for your mother in our department. I do not promise miracles, but I will take a look." "Wait a minute, you dry." Valerie grabbed her hand. "You were recommended, but for some reason we got to Tsvetkov and he is just some kind of bore. He kept trying to beg for money, hinted that any examinations cost something, and when he found out that I was a judge, he immediately became so polite. Yes, it is true, Vladimir Yegorovich loves money from us." Margarita nodded. The previous head of the department retired and this one turned around wide. "Well, you probably aren't too interested in our hospital kitchen." "Oh, come on." Valerie blushed. "Everything's fine and, by the way, is it time for you to go?" Yes, you're right." Rita started getting ready. "You promised to give me a ride," chatting. They headed to his car. The judge dropped Rita off at work and drove away, and she thought about how strange the day had turned out now. She too had a lawyer friend, which meant she had a chance to fight back against Pasha, but for now it was only a dream. Now she had to get back to work. "Why did you decide to go for a walk during working hours?" Vladimir Yegorovich appeared in her path. "But you, let me go yourself." Margarita reminded, "What's the problem?" "I was actually in court. I didn't go for a walk, I let her go for 2 hours and you were gone for almost 3. The head of the department grumbled peevishly. "And anyway, Margarita Vitalievna, why on? The department has the worst sales figures. We don't seem to have a store." "What sales?" She looked at the head with bewilderment. "Well, of course, paid services, wards, medicines. I gave everyone lists." Vladimir Yegorovich grumbled, "Why do other doctors sell, but you don't? There's no need to turn the clinic into an almshouse. You take everyone, even the poorest, and I've asked them 100 times to send them to the local clinic. Let them help there." "No, I'm sorry, but I won't do that," snapped Margarita. "Who's going to raise your statistics, your excellent salespeople?" "Hey, okay," the head muttered. Rita was right. It was her statistics that supported the entire department. Even seemingly hopeless patients recovered under Dr. Sukova's care, and the head was so used to taking credit for her laurels that he had somehow forgotten about it. And now he quickly weighed the pros and cons and then decided not to argue with an ostracized subordinate. Moreover, she worked, unlike many, really conscientiously. A couple of days later, Margarita went on 24-hour duty. This happened several times a month. She had just accepted the case and was sitting sorting out the appointments when Valerie looked into the office. "Hello, that's how we agreed, Mom, with a referral, but for some reason they told us there were no vacancies. We'll figure it out now." Rita nodded, getting up. "Where is your mom here?" "Meet Evdokia Antonovna." Valerie smiled. A former teacher taught all her life but had to quit her job. Mom literally falls asleep on the go. There was even a scandal, and sometimes she walks at night and then doesn't remember anything. "Okay, we'll see." Margarita sighed, looking at the modestly standing elderly woman. She was clearly embarrassed by such attention to her person. Margarita Vitalievna, the head of the department, appeared in the corridor. "I already told you, to this gentleman, that our department is overcrowded." "Valerie, are you ready to pay for a room for Mom?" Margarita whispered quickly. "Anything, no problem," he nodded. "Here, Vladimir Yegorovich, and, by the way, I am carrying out your instructions." Margarita flashed a smile. "We have a new paying patient, Evdokia Antonovna. Go to the cash desk, pay and come back, and in the meantime I will arrange for your mother." "What are you doing?" The head of the department grabbed her by the shoulder and dragged her into the office. "This is a judge. Do you understand? Why do we need such close attention here and not everything is smooth in the department? What if this judge and his mother showed up specifically to find out more?" "Vladimir Yegorovich, I don't understand you." Reed answered, "You either demand more paying patients or you don't want to take money." "Okay, but it's your responsibility." The head nurse roared. "If there are any problems, you'll be the one to blame, Ritulia. What kind of formality is this anyway?" Margarita narrowed her eyes. "I don't think we've switched to the informal, you, before. Yuk, we're all covered up." The head nurse continued to threaten. "So don't think you'll come out clean. So are we taking the patient?" "Yeah, take her already, but don't keep her for long." "What's wrong with her?" "Anyway, I haven't looked at the discharge papers." Yet Rita shrugged. "Okay, do your best," the head nurse said. "And keep Sequoia in mind. One wrong step and you're fired." Evdokia Antonovna stood there red as a tomato. She had clearly heard their conversation and didn't want to create problems. Rita tried to smile as pleasantly as possible and led the elderly woman to the right ward. "Are you having problems because of me?" Evdokia Antonovna asked quietly. Valerie was speaking, "Not you had to come. This Tsvetkov showed himself to be a boor last time too." "It's not about you," Rita waved her off. "I just don't follow his rules." "Well, that's what our head of the department considers them. Let's go, we're going to have an initial examination now." She studied the extracts from the medical record for a long time. The patient started getting sick about 3 years ago. At first she attributed all the symptoms to fatigue, until she fell asleep in literature class. The elderly teacher was asked to leave after that incident, but the symptoms only increased: drowsiness, weakness, severe headaches. The plump extract included all possible examinations. Evdokia Antonovna had all types of tumors and many other diagnoses ruled out, but no one managed to get to the bottom of the truth. Margarita, on the other hand, has a feeling there is a solution. It was only necessary to find it to begin with. She prescribed several more tests. She helped Evdokia Antonovna get a job and left her with her son. She herself went to morning rounds. And while Rita was solving the problems that had arisen at work, her ex-husband was also worried, despite the fact that he told his mistress that he was confident of winning in court. In fact, this situation worried him. The ex-wife's communication with the judge could go sideways, especially since he wrote down the car's number and had already made inquiries. He knew that this was the brother of the judge handling their case and, in search of a better solution, Pasha decided to consult with his mother. "Yes, you're right." Nina Valentinovna nodded. "This could complicate everything." How much is the house worth, according to the appraisal? 10, but you know yourself, prices have gone up. He nodded, and I'm not going to give her such a pile of money just like that rarely. They won't do any good anyway. Listen, maybe we should reduce the cost of her share, the mother drawled thoughtfully. For example, there will be a fire on her half. Rita doesn't live there. For example, she short-circuited the wiring. Who will sort it out? She could also be accused of not looking after her property. Mom, you're a genius. Pavel scooped it up and the house can be insured and all the damage covered. His mother winked at him. I have friends who do it quickly and then you can just buy out half of it for next to nothing. Well, who needs a fire? And you can use the insurance money to do repairs. That's all. Pavel was inspired by this idea. Together with his mother, they thought out a detailed plan. They decided not to put it off for long. The main thing was to hide the true state of affairs from Oksana. Pavel understood perfectly well that his mistress was a cunning girl, but she was so beautiful and obedient and ready to do a lot for such a house and a well-fed life. So he did not plan to get rid of his mistress. Although he did not plan to marry either. He was happy with everything as it was. Evdokia Antonovna was undergoing an examination. The sons, embarrassed, visited her, and one day Peter Borisovich met Margarita in the ward. He asked his mother's health and then suddenly asked, well, how did you agree with your ex-husband there? Oh no, this person, in principle, is not capable of dialogue. Rita sighed. I would nevertheless get in your place and lived in the house. The judge said this can become an important argument, otherwise the ex-husband will turn this property so that you don't need this property. Okay, I'll think. Margarita was embarrassed. Honestly, it's so awkward. Don't think that I undertook to treat your mother only to bow you to my side. Yes, I understand everything, her judge reassured. Well, if anything, I will just send your business to colleagues. You know, I suspect your mother's parasitic infection, Margarita said carefully, but still need to be tested. They are already appointed, made for a long time. You will pull the payment of the chamber for this time. Do not worry, for the sake of my mother. My brother and I were ready for everything. The judge nodded. By the way, can such infections give a similar picture? Oh, they can give anything, Rita sighed. Especially often neurology suffers. But we will see, do not worry. Having reversed the judge, she returned to work. Having had no time to miss the end of the shift, Margarita finally reached the house, and finally reached her house, and finally reached her house, and finally reached the house, and at 3 o'clock in the night the phone was woke up by Paul in the tube. Come, you will see it yourself. The ex-husband answered and hung up. In half an hour. I ran into the house. Pavel stood in training pants and a t-shirt. Everything around smelled of grief and smoke. Rita passed the house past her ex-husband. It was strange to see the same repair in half, but now, where there was a curve of the plasterboard partition, only black smoked walls gaped. Margarita, with tears in her eyes, examined what was left of furniture and things. Old photos were now only shreds of burning paper in the blanket. In the very center, a black hole flaunted. Her favorite chair also turned into a head. Margarita wiped the approaches to the tears. She understood. Here is the denouement. Well, have you seen enough? I have once to conduct excursions here. The ex-husband muttered. Will you take something to live here? It will clearly not work. Well, of course, she nodded. And why did your half not suffered? So the drywall saved, Pavel grinned. I put out the fire, did not have time to spread. And how did he even arise? Thought Margarita. I don't know, the insurers should say. Pavel threw casually. I actually suffered too. Also, now the repair is done, WEAT out the gate. Where should I go? In tears, Rita was indignant and sank to the floor where it was wet and dirty. Hey, what are you, her ex-husband pulled her. Stop it. But your half, of course, is now not worth a lot of money. But I can help. I will give it to 500,000, and then we will close the question by the house. So simple. Margarita looked at him through tears. That is, you get the whole house for these pennies. How did you want to invest in repairs? Keep in mind, I will sue. You will still compensate for the damage. There can be all the beams of the ceiling to change and even a bunch of any other. Pavel looked with a grin. So think what is better, a tit in your hands or a crane in the sky. Okay, I agree, enough of these ships from me. Rita nodded. Well, that's smart. Pavel had amused. So I will immediately give you the money there and give you at the meeting. Rita got into the car, clearly realizing that she was left without a house. Her only property was now this car, far from new but so far quite cheerfully traveling. She sighed. There was no point in sleeping clothing smoked with grief and smoke. It was necessary to change it before work. A day later, a court hearing took place. Rita was driving completely broken. Valerie met at the parking lot. At the parking lot. He joyfully went to her. His hand spread, but then removed a smile from his face. Something happened to you, he asked. Do not look very much, although there was no court yet, there is no more point in this, she answered, and told about the fire. Do not agree to any payments, Valerie demanded. Even after the fire, the house is more expensive and you won't buy a kennel for this money. Well, you can take a communal room for registration, she sighed. You will have to get into a loan, most likely. I actually remain outside. To come to your mother, so I advise you to call in a diagnosis. How else it was possible to help her he did not come up with at the meeting. Rita agreed to all the conditions of her ex-husband, signed a settlement with him and received money. Pavel could not hide the triumphant smile, and the ex-wife looked at the missing gaze somewhere past him. On the same day she took the money to the bank. I put it at the expense of interest. I decided that the apartment issue would take care later. I was just afraid to warmly make another stupidity. In their department, completely different events unfolded in a fit of lunaticism. Evdokia Antonovna wandered around the floor. All the nurses were busy with their business and there was simply no one to stop the elderly woman. She suddenly came to her senses in an unfamiliar wing of the hospital, and even to the sounds of a very strange discussion, one of the nurses taught the other to phase the medicine. Look, our head brings. You. Take empty packaging from licensed and poor, and then, when there is an appointment, you take it from them and will not be worse for patients. A timid voice asked, Oh, what's the difference to them? The nurse dismissed, You know these beggars were generally better treated in clinics. We give normal drugs with paid patients and this is enough analogs. What if someone will notice? I insisted. The second, why should we do this? Do you want a salary increase and do it silently? I demanded that the colleague instruct, and in general I have a less secret, but it seems that you are in vain. Evdokia Antonovna slowly tried not to make noise, moved further on the corridor. She finally found her ward and fell into bed. At the same time, the elderly woman understood that she was witnessing something not quite legitimate and did not want her to be found first to spoil the relations of the medical staff to the mother. The health of Evdokia Antonovna was in the first place for children. The story was heard by another person, Nurse Irina, one of those who were at night in the warehouse. She rushed into the office of the manager, forgetting everything in the world. Vladimir Igorovich, this lunatic of Savinov, caught us. She began with the threshold. Now he reports everything to his son. What exactly? The manager was scattered from the chair. We were bearing the medicine, but I taught the new one. Irina was embarrassed. I don't know how much this grandmother heard so well. He said already, and the manager infected and hit the table with his fist. Go, you did the right thing to tell me. Well, you will somehow remove her from the hospital. The nurse asked with fear. You understand, we first risk. Go, figure it out. answered Vladimir Igorovich and called Margarita to himself. He himself sat down to write papers. It was urgent to transfer Savinov away from their hospital, cause she stuck her head in Rita's office. I have a bypass now. By the way, they came for stain tests. A very interesting picture, and this does not matter anymore, the head dismissed. We transfer it to the regional hospital. There are better experts there, so let it be examined. But this is actually my patient. Margarita was indignant. Why did you decide so? Dry, I don't understand. Are you tired of working here? The boss looked at her through the narrowed eyelids. Listen, here you are silent and work on or write a statement for dismissal right now, and if you play, you will fly out of the article and forget about medicine forever. You have no right, whispered white as a cloth, as a doctor. Do you want to check my rights? Vladimir Igorovich got up and hung over it like a coshen over prey. Sukhov, I'm not your last manager. Do it as I said. Okay, I'll prepare for the translation. Margarita nodded. Well, no, I'll do it myself. The head pushed her aside. You already drove the things already stuffing the judge's mother to us. He pushed Rita from the office, locked him and went along the corridor. She stood pale and lost soon. The patient leaned out of one ward and asked her to approach. Rita decided to be distracted, having completely forgotten about the papers and test results which remained to lie in the manager's office. And now there was nothing to count on to receive them. Vladimir Igorovich was already entering the patient's ward. He tried to make the most sympathetic face, but instead some kind of grimace came out. Then the manager simply pushed the mask higher and stepped into the ward of this strange patient. There were already both her sons. Where is Margarita Vitalievna? One of them asked. She promised to give a report according to the results of the tests. Alas, they could not help your mother. Vladimir Igorovich spread his hands. My young colleague gave you too reckless a promise, but I am an experienced doctor, so I made papers to transfer your mother to the regional clinic. They have more modern equipment and have free places. You know it's already embarrassed for us to take money from you for the ward. Nothing we are quite capable of paying. Valerie dismissed. So what about analyses, and this will explain this to you, in the regional hospital with a new attending physician. The crew answered, well, all get ready. Go on a sanitary car. Everything is officially. Where is Margarita Vitalievna? Valerie insisted. I want to hear all this from her. So you are not alien people with her? Vladimir Igorovich grinned. So ask in a more secluded atmosphere, and we have a hospital here, not the house of the dates. You know the hour of? Evdokia left the ward in the corridor. She was in a hurry to be in the pocket of the robe. Of the robe, Rita, after all, they seemed to be such a decent woman. I even wanted to regret that they put little money. Do you want more? What are you? You are very mistaken. Rita shook her head. It is a pity that everything happens that way. Yes, you seem to do not care about everyone. He said. A real doctor would fight to the end for the patient. Rita, turning around silently, went further along the corridor, Valerie Grove. They did not take them into the car with their mother, so the judges followed on their cars. Margarita went to her office, put her hand in her pocket and felt for a note there. Turning the sheet, I saw a large teacher's handwriting. Evdokia Antonovna outlined what she saw and heard. Rita finally realized what exactly caused the panic of the manager, but she could not do anything and still decided to fight. She went to the warehouse of medicine. At first glance everything was in order. But in jars with drugs the pills were slightly different from each other. Now it was obvious. Without thinking twice, she photographed differences and then began to consider other drugs. Everywhere there were signs of substitution. Moreover, the means clearly took the cheapest, possibly even artisanal production. Margarita became colder, realizing that a huge money was involved here. And then Valerie's gaze remembered completely hatred. having paid a little compensation to his ex-wife. Pavel decided not to trifle. He succumbed to insurance compensation for damage, especially since the mother spoke about some acquaintances of agents who will break the payments without any problems. But everything somehow immediately went not according to plan. Not familiar to his mother came to the house, but some completely extraneous, disheveled and angry man introduced himself to Artyom and immediately began to ask uncomfortable questions. The fire inspection revealed possible intentional traces of arson. He said, "Can you somehow explain it?" "Hey, why should I do this?" Paul was surprised. "You prove that it was arson." "Well, you know, usually the victims willingly cooperate." Artyom grinned. "And you seem to prepare obstacles." "Listen, you do not seem to understand." Paul was indignant. "Your task is to quickly see everything here and write a conclusion, and not to conduct some investigation. Did you see the films and you do not fear me?" The insurance agent was offended. "You see, in conclusion, traces of combustible matter. Where did it come from?" "In the non-residential half of the house." "How do I know?" "Maybe the ex-wife brought the solvent, was going to repair the room." Pavel dismissed. "We erected a partition, we didn't go there anymore. We have a court decision. So I need to interview your wife. Give her contacts." The insurance agent asked, "Stop. And the house is already mine and here is Rita in general." Pavel tried to dissuade him. "Fun or what?" The agent was indignant. "Let's contact the contacts, otherwise I will send investigators and the laboratory. You will have to pay for examinations, Nesto." Pavel nevertheless recorded the contacts of Margarita. Artyom carefully took the sheet, as if he was afraid that he would bite him, put it in his pocket and went to examine the outer walls of the house. Pavel watched him warily, understanding perfectly well that this inspection might not end with good. He did not want to take risks, did not want to aggravate the conflict. The agent rolled up on the site until the evening. Pavel literally drove him out and then, barely the insurer left, dialed his mother's number. "Who did you advise me at all?" She said everything will be easy and simple, and this Molicoso simply turned every bush around the house. "Oh son, did not have time to warn, sorry." Nina Valentinovna was embarrassed. "My agent broke his leg. They sent some interns instead of him. And the guy seems to go off the official zeal, I noticed." Pavel was indignant. He could also reach arson before the prosecution. "Did you decide to make me a fraudster with my own hands, to put me in prison? I'll think about how to solve everything." Nina Valentinovna answered, "No, thank you, I don't need such help anymore." Pavel was indignant. "I can do without your connections." While Margarita had her secret investigation in the clinic, her former patient was transferred to the regional hospital. Evdokia Antonovna was very tired of the stately walls and she just wanted to get enough sleep without restraints. Without restraints, analyzed by the new doctor, what kind of smart girl was led to me? So that 3 years of torment, of course, is not about infection. The latter tests confirmed this. The doctor smiled. "Remember, 3 years ago, in open reservoirs, they bathed. Maybe they ate some unfinished meat, a wild boar, for example." "Failed," Evdokia Antonovna admitted. "But I was checked since." It is difficult to detect such a cunning type of parasites and the symptoms give a variety." The specialist spread his hands. "But now we will select the correct treatment. That is, Margarita was right." The elderly woman whispered and Valera scolded her. Yes, history okay in general, lie down in our quarantine, boxing so far, and when the tests show that there are no traces of parasites, you will go home." The doctor reassured it. A few days after the strange translation of her patient, Margarita understood she was followed near the hospital. She saw a stranger young man several times, and when he had already begun to spin near her car, she jumped out of the building for the parking lot. "What are you doing?" "I will call the police now," Margarita shouted. "Secoy citizen." Why don't you answer calls? The stranger asked. My name is Artyom, I am an insurance agent and I investigate your fire. It seems to me that everything is clean there, but I don't care. Margarita answered. The house belongs to my ex-husband, so I have nothing to do with him now. Why did you lay the same thing? And the young man got angry. Listen, this is the Tsukov fraud. Well, it's no longer interested in me. Rita answered indifferently. That's all you have. I need to go save people. She didn't listen to the insurance agent's lamentations any longer. He looked very young, about 25 years old, but he already seemed completely exhausted. There were dark shadows from sleepless nights under his eyes. But Margarita promised herself that she would not feel sorry for Artyom, and 2 days later she was sitting in the park and absent-mindedly throwing millet to the bird. She just wanted to get distracted, not to think about anything, but instead her thoughts constantly returned to Valerie, whom she no longer called, and to his mother. Her thoughts were interrupted by children's voices and Margarita looked in amazement at Artyom, who was walking towards her with the twins. They were about 3 years old, no more, and the children were chatting happily about something. Are you following me? Margarita asked with a smile. What's the matter? You just don't understand. Artyom sat down next to her on the bench. This is very important, my first case as an insurance agent. If I don't cope, they'll fire me, and I have children to feed. Are you raising them alone? Margarita was surprised. Yeah, well, not really. I have a girlfriend, the guy sighed. And their mother died in nature and we both grew up in orphanages, no parents, well, no grandparents. So I can't let Gosha and Tolia down in any way. Yes, they're sweet guys. Margarita smiled. It's obvious they're growing up in love. Do you have children? Artyom asked. I don't think there was anything about it in the documents. No, our marriage didn't produce children, Margarita admitted. Listen, of course I appreciate your desire to get to the bottom of the truth. But, as I said, I don't care. Pavel could have set the house on fire himself. He could have hired someone. It really wore me out, that's it. So I don't want to see him anymore. Well, I'll still have to call you to court if it comes to that. Artyom sighed. He wants to get several million in insurance, I wonder. Margarita thought. Well, frankly speaking, I would be glad if you didn't let him do that. So help me. Artyom asked. At least answer the questions. Margarita gave in, started explaining telling. They walked in the park for almost 2 hours and then Rita helped carry one of the sleeping twins home. Artyom dragged the second one. He lived in a hastily thrown together new building. But he didn't complain. He was happy with this housing and this meeting with the insurance agent made a strong impression on her. The goal-oriented guy tried for the sake of his children and she would be glad to help him, but she didn't understand how exactly yet, and they parted as good acquaintances. Margarita wandered to the house of her friend, whom she temporarily considered for now her own, but the next day she returned for a 24-hour shift. There weren't many patients. All the fee-paying patients were released for the weekend and even the residents of regular wards were willing to ask to go home. Margarita decided to have coffee with her colleagues in the emergency department. They were sitting and chatting when a new patient was brought in, a car accident victim. The guy had been barely brought to the hospital. Rita helped to inventory the things in his pockets and in his wallet. She saw a photo of the twins and rushed to the gurney. A few seconds later there was no doubt Artyom was in their hospital, and 10 minutes later he was gone. He didn't even regain consciousness. Margarita returned to her department completely shocked. The first thing she did in the morning was rush to Artyom's house. She pounded on the door and heard a child crying behind it. No one opened it, but the neighboring apartment swung open. A serious elderly woman looked out from there. She looked angrily at Margarita. He wants to get several million on insurance. Interesting, thought Margarita. Well, frankly, I would be glad if you had not allowed him to. So help me, Artyom asked. Answer at least questions. Margarita surrendered, began to explain, tell. They walked around the park for almost 2 hours, and then Rita still helped to carry one of the fallen twins home. Artyom dragged the second. He lived in a hastily slapped new building, but did not complain. He was happy with such housing. And this meeting with an insurance agent made a strong impression on her. The purposeful guy tried for the sake of his children, and she would be glad to help him, but so far she did not understand how. And they parted with good friends. Margarita wandered to the house of her friend, who was temporarily considered her so far, but the next day she returned to daily duty. There were few patients. All the rappers were released for the weekend, and the inhabitants of ordinary chambers were also eagerly offering home. Margarita decided to drink coffee with colleagues in the emergency department. They sat, chatted when they brought a new patient who suffered in a car accident. The guy was hardly taken to the hospital. Rita helped describe things from his pockets, and in a wallet she saw a photo of the twins and rushed Gurnitz. After a couple of seconds, there was no doubt. They had Artyom in the hospital, and after another 10 minutes he was gone. He did not even come into consciousness. Margarita returned to her department completely shocked. In the morning, first of all, she rushed to the house of Artyom. She drumming in the door and heard a child's crying behind them. No one opened, but the neighboring apartment swung open. From there a serious elderly woman looked out. She looked angrily at Margarita. "What are you getting hollow? And now Artyom will come." "Well, I probably went out for a moment." "He will not come. He died in the hospital after the accident," explained Margarita. "And the children seemed like a stepmother." "Oh, what is there?" The neighbor came out rattling with keys and massaging the region of the heart. "Is it true or something? A protrusion? And oh, the guys are miserable, orphaned again. And this girl was washed away in the morning with a suitcase. I thought Artyom kicked her out." "Probably, they called her from the police," Margarita guessed. "Lord! What a horror. They are completely alone there. The guardianship must be called." "Oh, I'll call now. I'm working there until retirement," said the woman, who introduced himself as a Vyacheslav Novoy Muse. "We will not throw them, of course, you are in a hurry." "I will wait with you," Rita promised. After a couple of hours, the police and representatives of the guardianship service took the children along with things and documents. There was a mess in the apartment. As if someone was gathering in puffs. Margarita looked at the twins, and they pulled her hands to her, and she swore that she would try not to leave them alone. Pavlo also could not sleep that morning. Investigators came to his house who wanted to know if the dry conflict with the dead had. In the car, papers and records were discovered indirectly indicating the investigation. Yes, and the office of the insurance company said that it was to this case that the deceased devoted all his time. Investigators suspected the murder, not an accident. And Paul, of course, became the first suspect. True, they did not begin to detain him, but they took a recognizance not to leave. And as soon as the investigators left the house, Paul grabbed the phone. "Mother, what have you done?" he shouted. "Why was it so to solve issues?" "Pasha, what are you talking about?" Nina Valentinovna was amazed. "What are the questions with this insurer?" He continued a little already. "I did not ask him to kill. And now the police come, they say the children remained orphans. This is not me," Nina Valentinovna immediately stated. "How could you think this at all? And what should I think after your promises? The son jealous. This is definitely not you. Swear the most expensive." "You," she just answered. "Yes, not me. Calm down." A few days later, another insurance agent arrived at Paul's house. He was refused payment, but threatened with a criminal case of insurance fraud. Pavel missed all this by past. He was much more afraid of the accusations of investigators who were engaged in the death of Artyom. But they did not call yet, and there were no summons either. Rita at this time communicated with guardianship authorities. They confirmed what she already knew. The mother of children died in childbirth, there were no relatives. Igor Zapostai was temporarily in the shelter, but soon they were supposed to be sent to an orphanage. So Margarita was advised to simply forget about these babies. They said that someone will willingly adopt such Krog. You understand, when arranging children in the priority of the family, not lonely people. And you also do not even have your own housing. Forget, just live on. And if I have housing? Rita asked hopefully. Children should have a separate room, and the area of the apartment meets the norms. The employee of the guardianship was lowered from heaven to earth. And in general, for adoption, you first need to go through the school of adopted parents, and this is at least another 6 months. I will try, Margarita promised, but she perfectly understood that she would buy her own accumulation for compensation from Paul and her own accumulation, at best, but in no way the apartment, which would be allowed to bring children. And this became bitter and painful. But she could not do anything and only intensely continued to collect incriminating evidence for the head and his henchmen. There were many violations. True, Margarita did not know where to go with these evidence. Valerie did not call anymore. There were simply no other acquaintances from the legal environment. Meanwhile, Evdak Antonovna finally began to help treatment. Sleep violations passed. The woman began to gain normal weight. The sons visited her in turn. And in one of these visits, the mother reproachfully told Valeria, "Well, how are your business with Margarita? She's a good woman, but you completely offended her in vain. And my doctor said that it was Margarita who figured out my illness." "Well, what can I?" the man dismissed. "She does not want to see me after everything that I said then." "Sorry." "You are a man or where?" said Evdokia Antonovna. "I taught you since childhood. Errors must be recognized. Don't you like Rita?" "Yes, it seems that I have not met such women," the son admitted. "Well, what am I saying? So tell me." "He was a fool," Mom grinned. "Women love those who are ready to recognize mistakes. And thank you very much from me. Let the girl find out that she was not mistaken with a diagnosis." "Okay, I'll call," Valera promised. But upon returning to the city, he hesitated, could not force himself to pick up the phone. At some point, he still decided. Rithi called just to hear her voice. "Hello. Excuse me, Bagora," he began a conversation. "I behaved very ugly and said a lot of superfluous. This is not true at all what I said." "I'm glad you called," Margarita was embarrassed. "You know, your advice would come in handy. Let's meet me." "I can come right now," Valerie quickly suggested. And after half an hour they sat in the same cafe, not far from here. Margarita looked exhausted. There was nothing from the beauty in the heels that Valerie saw on the day of dating. Something happened. The judge was surprised. "You know, my mother is already much better. She asked to convey that your diagnosis was confirmed." "Wow, I'm glad for her," Rita smiled weakly. But she herself got confused. It became impossible to work in the department. I collected evidence of some violations. But now I don't know what to do with them. Yes, and these children. What children? Valerie was amazed. You did not have children. And Margarita briefly told him about the twins. The man's face was distorted from pity, and her heart finally trembled. She realized how much she missed Valerie and how she lacked his straightforwardness and warmth. "Listen," he said suddenly, "if we get married, because they will give more children. You know, I'm even ready to become a fictitious husband and provide an apartment if you need it." "What, are you really ready for this for me?" Rita was amazed, and her eyes sparkled with tears. "Well, this is very serious." He Katya, you can apply right now. We are both free and not connected by any obligations. I agree. And what to do with the department? Rita looked at him with hope. I have a comrade in the prosecutor's office. Can you pass the collected materials to him? They will conduct a check, and if everything is confirmed, your head is unlikely to strengthen in such a warm place. Great, like him, you should not treat people at all, Margarita nodded. And they began to prepare for the wedding. Nobody, however, did not particularly devote to plans. They still lived separately. But in the process of preparing for adoption, it was necessary to collect many certificates, and rumors about this reached Paul. The ex-husband decided to spoil the life of the ex-wife. Especially since she was going to adopt the children of the very agent, because of which he almost got into prison. So Pavel did not find anything better than writing an anonymous complaint. Having accused Valerie of trying to make effective marriage and adoption of children with selfish purposes. In the evening, Valera arrived at her work gloomy. I was removed from work, the judge said. For the defamatory honor and dignity of behavior, there will be a proceedings at best for several months. Wow. What are you accused of? Rita asked. Yes, in general, in truth. And Valerie spoke about the contents of the anonymous. I suspect that our happiness with you is very haunted by someone. At work, by the way, they hinted that it is better for me to leave on my own. Oh, I'm sorry. It turns out because of me, because of my stupid plans, Margarita was embarrassed. And it seems to me that the best thing that can be answered to all envious people is still a wedding, Valera answered simply. So I would like it not to be effective, but a real marriage. I agree, she blushed. And I think you will be the best dad with this boy. They got married after 2 weeks. Valerie voluntarily used from the service, but did not lower his hands. He opened his own legal office, prepared for the exam for a lawyer and now wanted to present the other side of the process. Together they went through the school of foster parents and, finally, took the guys from the orphanage. And Evdokia Antonovna, who was discharged from the hospital, was happy to mess with her granddaughters, enjoying communication with her children. Looking at the joyful mother, Valera was happy. Well, in the hospital where Margarita worked, a large-scale check was underway. Then the dismissal broke out. A considerable part of the staff left, and Margarita offered to head the department. She agreed to the joy of her new family. Husband, the mother-in-law, worried about her the most. She did not know anything about the fate of her ex-spouse, and she was not particularly interested. She closed this page, as it seemed to her forever. But one day, returning from work, she rode past their former house. Rita turned her head and braked sharply. Instead of a neat modern cottage, there was an ash on the site. She slowly moved along the side of the road, examining the island of the house, and then noticed a man walking there. What stared? The ex-husband snapped. Dirty, unshaven, overgrown. Go where you were driving. Pasha, what's the matter with you? Rita gasped. What happened? Has burned out, he answered and spat under his feet. It would be better if he sold everything then. He wandered on, and Rita went home to the children, her husband, mother-in-law, to his new, happy life. Thank you for watching to the end. If you liked the story, the request to support me with the button. Important.